You're listening to episode 146 of the Sworn and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman.
On today's podcast, this is going to be a bit like a lesson, but an amazing one, because we have got Flo Carter, who you may know better as Flo Carter Eventing on Instagram. Now, not only is Flo amazing and is perfect, you're going to love this podcast, but I have got to tell you how she approached me, because it was genuinely like a masterclass. So Flo, first of all, hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
I have checked with Flo and she's happy that I read out some bits of her email, which basically Flo listened to the podcast, How to Pitch to Be on a Podcast. And this is a masterclass, right? So think about everything I said in that podcast. So starts off, hope you, Goo, and the rest of the family are well and surviving this miserable third lockdown. You must be an expert at homeschooling by now. So tip one, she's referenced something that is on my social. She's clearly following me. Listen to one of your recent podcasts. Your top tips and advice certainly came in handy. I hope this is reflected in this email. Then she tells me a bit about herself, which is really useful, and why she's different. So in the space of 12 months, my social media following has quadrupled. Sorry, I'll go back a step because I'm not reading it out word for word, but you had a really challenging season in 2019, which we're going to talk about, changed it around, really changed things up. Then we've got, it's no secret, I'm a big fan of your podcast. It has been a useful asset helping me navigate the world of influencing. And we've spoken on Instagram about the rules surrounding advertising in the ASA. She then goes and mentions 3 different episodes going back in time and what was useful, and then what she'd like to talk about on the podcast and how she's going to add value to you lot. I mean, honestly, this came through at 9:30 at night. I read it at 9:30 at night. I'd replied, I think, very quickly. Blooming well done, Flo. That's your intro. Tell us all about you.
So I am a 19-year-old event rider. I've currently got 4 horses, all at very different stages. I'm competing up to about being novice 2-star, but I've also got like a 4-year-old, 14-2 at home. And I'm actually currently on a second gap year, much to my parents' dismay. I haven't gone to university yet. I'm going in September, but the idea of going in the middle of a global pandemic was just not for me.
No, what are you going to study?
I'm going to study history at Loughborough, so I'm really, really excited.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think that's probably a good call, isn't it, at the moment? Going in the middle of a global pandemic is probably not good.
No, especially when I can stay here and play horses for another year. So
isn't that the dream? So, I mean, I was just blown away by your email. I get quite a lot of approaches for podcasts, and this was the best one I've ever had. So you've set the bar really high. But what was really interesting is before we started recording, it works the other way, because you said you've been approached by other people. And again, like when I look for people to go on my podcast, you look for all the kind of boxes that tick. But as an influencer, you also look for that too, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we said before that we hit record that I'd been approached by a podcast that it didn't suit me. And I'd never really thought before I listened to your podcast that you might actually approach someone about a podcast. And it sort of opened up all these ideas for me as someone who has learned so much from your podcast in the sort of short time that I've been on social media. And so, yeah, I was like, well, I've got to do it. I've got to write this email. And then I just sat down and I wrote it in one sitting. I was like, got to send it, got to get it out.
Well, it's brilliant. So let's talk about you on social media. How and why did you start sharing what you did with the world on social?
So I've actually had a horsey social media account for quite a long time, just as somewhere it basically started with me going out to competitions, and I get about 1 competition on film, and then my phone storage would run out way back about 5 years ago. And so I used it as a place to sort of dump these competition videos so that I could then record the next one. And that's all it really was. And I didn't use stories. I didn't look at the comments. It was literally just somewhere for me to document what I've been going through. And that sort of carried on into the start of 2019, which was by far the most successful start to an event season I'd ever had. It was, it was looking good for me. I stepped up to be a novice. I was longlisted for the under 18 sort of national eventing championships. I qualified for Pink Champs. I was like, this is it. And then the second half of the season took a little bit of a turn. I mean, it wasn't a nightmare, but basically the weather got involved, and all these championships were abandoned. I went to my first 2-star, and after the dressage, I was like second bottom on the leaderboard, and I was like, it's fine, I can prove myself in the jumping phases. And then it got abandoned, and then I didn't get selected for these teams that I'd been longlisted for, and the final straw was like the final event of the 2019 season. I basically went out and chased the top 10 placing, and at the second last fence in the cross country course had a run out, and I hadn't had a run out all season, and it cost me that placing. And I was gutted. I was so upset. And I came home and I went, it's fine. Let me just look on social media. Let me find people who remind me I'm not alone, that everyone's going through this. And I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anyone really sharing their same stories at that sort of level. I even sort of turned to people that I knew had been at that same competition and had problems, radio silence. And at first I was a little bit almost like crossed. I was like, well, people should share it. And then I was like, no, but you're adding to this. You don't want to talk about it. So you're adding to the stigma that we only share the perfect and polished versions of ourselves. So I sort of decided 2020, gap year, new year, and it's time to just be honest, to share the highs and the lows with horses, because there are a lot of them.
Oh, aren't there just?
Yes, that was sort of how it started for me.
I love that. So it's kind of bizarre, really, that a really challenging year is what has helped you to really blow up on social media in the best possible way, that by being that authentic is used so much. I mean, you can be authentic if you're sharing good things. I mean, I'm not being critical of that at all, but sharing perhaps more dimensions of your world has really helped to improve your social media in terms of engagement, followers, everything else, by just being more real. But was it quite scary when you started to kind of put on, I had a really rubbish day today? How did it feel?
It definitely was. So I started a YouTube channel as well, and I kind of decided that it was going to mostly be event vlogging, because that's what I do and that's what I love. And my first event I went to, the first dressage test of my first vlog, the horse that I was on didn't want to play ball. We didn't canter once in the test. We had our head in the air. We walked back up the centre line at the end. We had a little rear at the start, and I got 46, and I was dead last in the class. And I thought, oh, of course, here we go. The moment I decided to start being honest, here we go. And I sort of had a moment where I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just start next week. Maybe I'll start next time. And I was like, no, you've got to just do it. You've got to put it out there. And actually, that same horse has been the one that people have been so supportive of when I've then done well, or when things have gone better, or I secured a sort of dressage saddle sponsorship for that very horse. And basically, that is where my audience has been the most amazing and supportive, because they've seen the whole journey.
And I think that does allow us to get behind people more, doesn't it? Because we can all relate to those days when our horse turns into some kind of crazy camel and we've no idea what was going on, because at home it was doing really well and it's just something's upset it and it's just not playing ball at all. But everybody has those days, don't they? But as you say, not everybody shares them, and that can be their own personal choice, but it can make us feel like we're failing because everyone else is having these perfect days. It's like how on social media you generally show up as your most polished, perfect self, but you don't show the fact that you've been screaming at your children, or that your car's broken down, or we share these tiny snapshots of our day. And obviously we want to share positive things, or that, it's such a funny one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so difficult because it's so easy to, hit post on a video of me jumping 1.50 m on my gorgeous dun horse, or on the third place. It's definitely not so easy to go, here's a video of my horse spinning around in the arena, or, here's a result where I came 6 out of 6. It's just not as easy, but I have just been so overwhelmed with how rewarding it is. That is something that I never really expected.
So talk to us about how it's been rewarding. I mean, obviously from the numbers point of view, you have now got, so in the space of 12 months, your social media following has quadrupled, with over 25,000 active and engaged followers on Instagram, and a growing audience on YouTube too, with over 10,000 monthly views. So the stats are obviously really good to show that. But how has that kind of translated for you in terms of connection or opportunities? How's that worked?
Well, for me, the biggest thing is the support, in the sense that when you share something of, yourself feeling a bit down, even last week, I was actually struggling with the very same horse with dressage again. He's come back off his winter break and he's feeling good. And the idea of trotting around an arena, going in pretty circles is just not for him. And I just felt rubbish. I was in this lockdown bubble. I couldn't go out and see friends or, sort of like get over it how I usually would. So I was feeling really sort of rubbish and a bit low, like this is everything. And it actually took me to share that a bit on my stories and an Instagram post, and just the messages and the comments and people going, not only sort of like, you're going to get through this, but actually the DMs of people going, thank you so much for being honest and sharing this, because I'm having a rubbish week and you're reminding me that it's normal and it's okay. And just sort of, I guess, I make people feel like they're not alone, but they equally make me feel like I'm not alone. So it's really beneficial both ways. And obviously, sharing the highs and the lows, sharing the real journey has led to an active and engaged following, because people aren't just looking at these posts on social media of this week I came first, this week I came second, because that's not me. I am so pleased if I finish in the top 10. I have a sort of ongoing joke with my audience about how the place I always finish as 11th, it's just my place, it's always 11th. But people are so supportive then when I do finish in the top 10, because I'm not afraid to sort of talk about that. So I think the biggest thing that I have gained from it, other than sort of actually being able to rationalize it with myself, I leave a bad day, and where before 2 years ago I go, right, it's a bad day, we're not going to talk about it, we're going to sit in the lorry on the way home and pretend it never happened. Now I'm almost forced to go, okay, well, why did it happen and how can we turn this into a positive? How can I share it with my audience? And so that's also been really useful for me.
Definitely. Now, as you said, your following quadrupled in 12 months, which is mega. Like, that is some going. Was it quite an adjustment to go from having a smaller, perhaps not so engaged following, to having this big number of people who want to reach out to you, who want to talk to you? And how have you managed that?
Yeah, it's obviously there have been loads and loads of amazing parts. It was quite overwhelming at first, because I almost didn't really realize what was going on. And it kind of coincided with lockdown. So I was really lucky that this one event vlog that I referenced earlier, where everything went downhill, was in the first 2 weeks of the eventing season, when coronavirus was really just not something on our minds. And then suddenly we were thrown into lockdown. And I actually think that lockdown really benefited my socials, because people had more time in their hands to be scrolling and watching vlogs. And actually that was when this huge sort of I guess increase in followers actually really happened. And it's quite easy to sort of like see the messages, and and that's one thing that was certainly overwhelming. But really, when then lockdown restrictions were lifted and I went back out eventing, and suddenly people were saying hi to me, or people were filming me, or people were sending me messages like, I think I'm against you, or which day are you going, I really want to watch you, that sort of thing. That was at the moment where I was like, oh wow, like I was not expecting this, and perhaps I wasn't prepared for this.
How has it been adjusting to that? Have you now, because obviously now it's been going on for a little while, do you still find it quite overwhelming, or do you sort of roll with it a bit more now?
I really love it. I really love, on the days, for example, that I get out fence judging, I love it when people stop and they come and chat to me, and it's amazing. I certainly feel a little bit more pressure on myself because, as we were saying, everyone has rubbish days, and sometimes you just want to finish judging around, you just want to go and sit in the lorry, and you just want to take 5 minutes, and you don't want to be all smiling happy. You're like, this was just awful. And I feel so much like that's not something that I can do. As long as I'm out, I've got to be smiling. I've got to, no matter what's gone on, I've got to put a positive spin on it. I've got to look like I'm having my best day, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm, that I'm a different person, because I put out the real me online. And, I share the things that go wrong, but you never want anyone to think, oh gosh, but she, she's actually really grumpy behind the scenes, because that's not me. And you don't want anyone to take you out of context because you have a couple of bad minutes. So although I wouldn't say I find it overwhelming anymore, I actually find it amazing. I am constantly aware of, the pressure every time that I'm out and I see someone sort of filming. I'm like, oh, got to get the right stride to this fence, all those tiny little things, which I think will come even more with time. I think, it won't phase me as much, but it's certainly, it was quite an adjustment. It wasn't gradual. It was like you're going from being sort of locked away to suddenly out eventing again. And it's just been very different.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. And as you say, if you just want to kind of go back, have a bit of a sit, and it's not that you don't want to share or that you won't share, but I think sometimes when we've had quite challenging things happen, having that moment just to kind of process it and go, well, that was rubbish, or it was rubbish, but this was positive, or this was positive, but being in the kind of spotlight. But indeed, that is, I think when you grow accounts and people do start to recognize you, and you really have that influencer badge, that is definitely one of the side effects, which can be massively positive and really like lovely, that people are kind of cheering you on and want you to do well and want to get involved with you, but also quite unusual for people that you don't necessarily know having such an interest in your life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, it's amazing that I get back from an event and often there's like 3 or 4 people that have sent me a message straight away, like, here's a video of you that I took when, while you were out going around the cross-country course. And, it benefits me, it benefits my content, my vlogs, and it's amazing. But it's certainly a surreal experience. You're like, oh gosh, well, what if someone got, the fence of me where I clattered through it and looked awful? Like, it's weird. Is the only way I can describe it. Is it's such a strange feeling.
Have you had any issue with kind of online negativity, I want to say, for want of a better expression? Because as you say, we do see lots of pictures or little bits of video where horses aren't going particularly well, or they're a bit overbent, or they're a bit this or a bit that or a bit the other. And there are a certain group of people, not a particular name, I mean just a group of people who do seem to enjoy correcting, I don't know how to word this nicely, but negativity, unnecessary negativity, trolling. There's that group there. Have you had any experience with that?
So I'm really lucky that I've never had anyone say anything to me that's like genuinely so personal and hurtful. And I've seen it happen to other people. You see those big long messages, and I feel very lucky that the audience I have is mega supportive. My only sort of times that I've faced any sort of like negative comments, and they're usually ones that are very easy to brush off, is actually on the posts that do the best and the most successful. I'm very lucky that the explore page seems to pick up on a lot of things I do on Instagram. Some of my videos have 50, 60, 70,000 views, and it's on those posts where it's the people who don't follow me, who aren't aware of me, who will say, oh, well, your stirrups are too long. Or I had one the other day that just made me laugh, that was like, you're pulling your horse in the mouth over this fence and your position isn't very good and you should really do better because you're going to have a serious accident one day. And I was like, but if you watch the video, I'm not pulling the horse in the mouth. Like I'm not doing that. And that's not too bad because I can rationalize it and brush it off and it's fine. So I'm lucky that there's never been anything horrible. But I think as soon as you start putting yourself out there, as soon as you get 400 lovely comments, that one of them is going to be negative.
Yeah, but I think it is it's a sad fact of life, but it isn't one that should be acceptable. But I think, as you say, you do see so many accounts, particularly the bigger ones, that they could have the most beautiful picture on of everything going really well, and somebody will still potentially have a little dig in the side, and you're kind of thinking, what on earth is happening here?
I know. You think, who has got that time to sit down and write all those horrible things? Who's spending their time doing that?
No, it's a bizarre use of time, a very bizarre use of time. But there we go. Now, in your lovely email, you said that you obviously like to discuss your social media growth, but also what it's like to work with brands. So I would love to hear a bit about the experiences you've had working with brands. Tell us who you've worked with, how that's worked, all the things.
Yeah, so I'm really lucky to be supported by 4 amazing companies and there's potentially a 5th on the way. And it's just been an incredible experience to work with some of the big name brands. The first brand that really started working with me was HorseQuest, and that was actually through their bursary scheme. So that was pretty incredible for me. I've bought like 3 or 4 of my horses through HorseQuest, So when I got that phone call saying that I'd won, that was just amazing. And I had the best year sort of writing blogs for them and had a lesson with Sam Griffiths. And then at the end of the year, I was really lucky that they said, we'd love you to sell as a brand ambassador. So that sort of thing has been amazing and just so surreal. And that's obviously all thanks to my social media. That wouldn't have happened without. I mean, one of the biggest pinch me moments was waking up one morning to an email in my business inbox from Fairfax and Favour. I was just like, what, why do Fairfax and Favour want to work with me? I was like, is this real? So all of these moments that I have to sort of pinch myself when they get in touch. And I'm really lucky that now it's sort of gone the other way. Once upon a time, it was actually me getting in touch with brands. And I think there is a real stigma about that, about, influencers, as much as I don't love the word influence, but influencers getting in touch with people because there are a lot of people who do it in the wrong way. And once upon a time, it was me getting in touch with brands that I genuinely loved and used, and and it had really varying success. My first ever sponsorship that I secured was with Better Life, a supplement company, and I'm really lucky that I got in touch with them as a brand that I genuinely love, and they got back and went, this is perfect. And now it's sort of gone the other way. Now I have tens of brands emailing me each week, and I get to be selective the other way. And it's certainly funny because on your podcast you've spoken before about the best way for people to approach brands. And now I'm seeing the other side. I'm seeing brands approach me, and sometimes in ways that I think, God, did you really expect that to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, because usually I'd see it from the what the brands receive. And as you say, if a brand gets approached by someone who genuinely loves their product, uses their product, has got value to add, even if they say no, they're going to still be happy to have had that interaction. But a lot of people approach brands in ways that can quite literally be a DM going, sponsor me, ? From someone that doesn't follow them. They've never interacted with them before. And you just think, how on earth can this be answered? But it's interesting. So you get, obviously, I mean, I'm not surprised at all. You're lovely. And obviously having a big engaged following does mean that you're very attractive to brands, because you can get your message out there. So obviously not naming names, but what's some of the kind of interesting things that you've had in your inbox, or ways that people have suggested things, or even what they've offered? Because again, I think that some brands appreciate that obviously some people will be happy to have things for free. Some people will be happy to have things for free depending on the value of the product and whether they want the product, and also what they're expecting from it. So can you tell us a bit about what's really stood out for you, the good and the bad?
Yeah, of course. So I completely agree. So last year, when I was having my first sort of experiences of working with brands and them getting in touch with me, I would basically accept any product of any value, and I would do my very best to promote it. And then I realized towards the end of last year, actually, sometimes I'm putting in a lot of work for a product that's great and I love, otherwise I wouldn't be promoting it. But it's not very high value. And actually, now this year, I sort of came in asking, trying to kind of ask about, the ad rates, everything in that sort of sphere. And it's certainly been interesting. Some brands are just like, nope. Some of them are really nice about it. Some obviously say yes. I actually even had a brand the other day who went, I want to pay you more than that. That's not enough. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. That's certainly been something difficult to navigate. I'm still very much in that stage of, if something is really high value to me, then, I'm happy to do whatever. But as soon as you start sending things over perhaps of lower value, or you want a whole vlog or something like that, then it's the ad rate conversation is certainly coming in sort of with me. But I actually had a message just last week that just made me laugh so much. You have to laugh, because it was from a brand that wasn't even really equestrian. It wouldn't really fall into the normal sort of type of brands that I would work with. And it started with the classic, dear sir / madam. I thought, that's an awful start. That's not good. And then it went on to say, we really want to work with you because we love blank line about your account. But obviously they'd been messaging loads of people and they were meant to be putting in a niche, and they'd obviously forgotten. And I just sat there and I laughed, because I was like, if I don't laugh, I'll cry. This is the fact that a company, and they have nearly 20,000 followers on their social media, thought that they could approach me and just leave a blank line, which just baffled me.
Oh my goodness, that is not good at all, is it? So I'm guessing you didn't go for that one.
No, I always make sure I try and get back to everyone, but that was certainly a very short reply. Thank you for the email, but no, thank you.
But blank.
I should have done that.
Next time. So what have been, when you see certain things written in a message, do you think,
Yeah, so for me, often I can tell whether it's an idea I'm going to entertain within the first few lines, when they're personal, when they, reach out and they're like, often it's either we've seen you on YouTube, we love this vlog, a bit like when you were talking about how to pitch a podcast, the referencing something specific, or a lot of brands get in touch because they've seen my lovely dun horse Atty on social media, because he's quite a character, and they get in touch and they're like, we love him, and I'm like, great, you know who I am, as in you've looked into me, I'm not just a number, a potential promotion. So that's certainly a positive. Things that I look for that are negatives, obviously, when it starts without my name, just hi, or something it's not that difficult. My email has my name in it, my social media account has my name in it. It's quite easy to sort of know my name and to say something to start personally. But also, actually, when brands are like, we want this number of story posts, this number of this, and you have to mention this in every single one. And don't get me wrong, I love it when brands come to me with ideas. I am so interested, and I was, even before I started social media, in the sort of the way that social media marketing happens. I think it's so fascinating and such a growing platform. And so I love it when brands are like, we would love you to do a vlog which includes this, take that as you will. But equally, I love it when they say, we would love you to come up with an idea of something that's creative and new. And when Fairfax and Favour got in touch with me, it was because they wanted to see a reel, and I was like, perfect, that's not something I've ever done before, and I'd love to give it a try. But when they're like, we want you to post this and leave it up for 24 hours, and we want you to say this exact, these exact copy and pasted words, or sometimes they even send over an image, they're like, you can use this image, and I'm like, no, because that's just an advert, I'm not a magazine.
No, but also what I think is really quite mind-blowing about that is that they want to work with you because they want to get to, in the nicest possible way, your audience. Now, that your audience follow you because of your content. And I would always say to a brand, like, if you're looking to work with an influencer, make sure you like what they do, because you want to say to them, I want to promote this whatever. How do you think your audience are going to really get it? And how would it fit into your content in a way that it feels native? Obviously, you get it labeled properly and you do all the right things, but if you posted a picture of some random woman holding a product, would your audience kind of go, what's happened there?
Exactly, they wouldn't understand. At the end of the day, nobody knows my audience as well as I do. Nobody knows your audience as well as you do. That's just how it works. And people follow me because they want to see what I like, what I enjoy, what I'm up to. They don't want to see a copy and pasted advert that could be in a magazine, because they would go and look at a magazine if they wanted that. So it certainly is interesting. And I always turn down brands if they're like, you must use this image and you must say all of this exactly. I don't mind, using hashtags, or, when they have a few key points that they would like me to talk about. Of course, that makes so much sense and actually helps me and steers me in the right direction. When they're like, you must say this and nothing else, it's like, well, it's not for me then.
No, and I think it's really good of you to like know that and to stay true to that, because I think that I know when I'm looking at social media, when I see too many like duplicate things, I just think, the person hasn't got any connection to it, whether that's true or not. Because if the wording's the same, you think they've been given that. They haven't experienced a product for themselves. They don't know that they really like this about it, or it smells like this. They're just doing what they've been told. And I get why, because obviously there's a financial reward, but then your audience is worth more than the financial reward, because you want to keep nurturing and growing that, which is going to lead you to more opportunities in the future, which could financially be a lot more lucrative.
Exactly, that is how I see it. Is when I started this journey, when I started documenting everything on social media, it wasn't to work with brands, and it wasn't for that little bit of money. And the money is not, it's enough to go out and have a few drinks at a pub when they're open. It's not, it's not going to pay rent for the month. It's, it's not going to buy me a new horse. So it's absolutely not worth alienating my audience, because I'm really lucky that, because I only take up opportunities that I genuinely believe in with brands and products that I've genuinely tried, my audience tends to respond pretty well. And then the brands get stuff out of it. The brands enjoy working with me. Often I then work with them again. But as soon as you start talking about things that you really don't care about, your audience will just notice. They'll lock onto it so quickly, and it's just not worth it.
It's a time too, isn't it? Because if you're having to create very specific content for brands, that's time you're not riding, training, doing other things. And that has to have a cost to it as well.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's something that I wasn't doing a year ago. And as much as I love working with brands, I just think it's just the most fascinating thing to do. And I've known before, when I took up a couple of opportunities right early on, that I was like, well, I'm not actually enjoying talking about this or making this. And that was such a learning thing for me. I was like, right, it's not worth it then. Don't do that in future, because usually because it's something I believe in and am so excited by, I look forward to taking photos of products or filming or talking about them. So it's certainly been something that I've learned. It's like, if you're not excited, if that email comes through and you're not like, wow, I could really talk about that and I could really sell it to my audience, then it means you're not truly passionate about it. And different people do different things, but for me, I'm not making a living out of doing this. It's a fun little hobby on the side, so it's not worth not enjoying it.
No, 100%. I think that's a really good point. You also put in your email, I love the fact that I'm referencing your email as my notes. This is making me a very happy camper. About your experience with the algorithm, because the algorithm gets quite a bad, well, people get very angry about it. Personally, I don't see the point in getting angry about it, because we definitely can't change it. It does get changed, and obviously, it adapts to help deliver the objectives of the company that own the platform we use. And when I see about people trying to beat the algorithm, that the word just bothers me. I just think, why are we not going to work with it? But I would love your take on this, because as you said earlier, your content does get favored quite often on the Explore page. So can you talk to us a bit about your experience?
Yeah, so essentially, I actually found that my success in social media is probably largely linked to this Instagram Explore page. A lot of my audience come from there. It's either there or from YouTube. And I actually found my first post that ever hit the Explore page. I don't want to say it went viral, because it got like 20,000 views, which isn't viral, but for me at the time, with an audience of about 6,000 people, was incredible. And I was like, wow, was actually a video that I posted right when we went into lockdown, because I was struggling for content. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll just post this. And it was like it was like one of those quite short, quite sharp, 10-second with a bit of a slow motion. And actually, now that is very much what I've sort of become known for, if that makes sense. That's what I do a lot of. And some people would say, okay, well, that's not what you were doing 2 years ago, so that's not authentic. But actually, it's still me, it's still my content, and it's still stuff that I love posting. It's just being a bit smart about the algorithm. Like you said, it gets a really bad name, and people say, don't share things that if you're doing it just for the audience. And yes, I agree, I won't ever go out there and post something that I'm like, oh, well, I'm only doing this because it's going to do well. But actually, if you've got a video, where I used to just post completely raw videos of me going over, and actually all you have to do is take that same footage, you're not sort of molding it into anything it isn't, and just put a bit of like a slow-mo on it. And if that's going to really engage with the audience, that's an effective thing to do. And I don't think that it should get a bad name. It shouldn't,
No, I agree with you completely. I think that it's looking at what's working. So obviously you mentioned Reels there, and at the moment Reels are getting a lot of airtime. That's a completely wrong word, but they are getting prioritized by Instagram. You click on the Explore page and there's a big old reel in the corner and another big old reel. So why not do Reels? Why not make Reels? Because that's what Instagram is trying to show people. It's not trying to beat the algorithm, it's looking at what works. And as you say, if you're still talking about your life and you're being authentic, etc., but having a bit of an effect in there means that it gets organically boosted because Instagram likes it, why the heck not?
Yeah, exactly. It's still me, it's still my content. And I think that you touching on Reels is such a good example of using every tool that Instagram provides. Instagram favors people who use all of their tools because that's why they have them. So I make sure that I am always pretty active on stories. And when I'm active on my stories, I'm also using polls and question boxes and, things like that, as well as, posting photos, posting videos, posting reels. I just think you create a much better overall picture when you utilize. There's a reason that Instagram put those tools there at your disposal, and it's because they want you to use them. And I'm always the first when something new comes out, like when the reels were introduced on Instagram, and I was like, oh no, it's something new. It's not the same old comfy Instagram. but actually the reel that I posted last week is now at 100,000 views. So you have to be grateful, you know, to Instagram for these opportunities, rather than going, oh, this post didn't do so well. And you just think, but if you didn't have the platform, you know, you wouldn't be sharing it with anyone. So you've got to be grateful for what you've got while you have it.
I could not agree more with you there. Now, obviously, you've got following, as I said, over 25,000, and a lot of those people will be looking to you, obviously, for inspiration and for realism, but also they'll probably be looking to grow their own accounts as an influencer. I know that a lot of my followers as well are very keen to carry on growing and developing their own accounts to sort of share their horsey life. So do you have any tips that you'd like to share regarding your influencer journey and how people can grow their own accounts too?
Yeah, so definitely. So I've obviously listened to a lot of your influencer podcasts because they have really helped me out. And I know that quite often people come on here and they say, you know, don't go and set out to have an account to grow it, because that's not the right attitude. And I do agree with that. I think completely, you know, if you're going out there just to try and gain followers, it shows. But I do think that there are things that you can do to really help your chances in an organic way. So my advice would be posting regularly. That's just such a huge thing. You know, I am trying to post, you know, like 5 or 6 times a week. And yeah, it's a lot, but it's because if you don't, someone else will. And Instagram will pick up on that. And it's hard, which is why you've kind of got to know what you're getting into. But definitely is post regularly, and is try not to get upset if it doesn't go your way. So of my first sort of 5 or 6 YouTube vlogs, I don't think any of them got more than 200 views. You know, none of them did. And I was like, God, I'm spending hours editing these videos and I'm pouring my heart into it. And I think they're all right. Why does no one else think that? But all it takes is that one, you know, that one to get a little bit more traction and to grow. So, you know, post regularly and stick at it. Really, really sort of keep going and keep believing in yourself. And if it's something you genuinely enjoy, then the numbers should be a bonus. They shouldn't be the only thing. It's such a saturated sort of market at the moment. There's so many people doing it now because it is a really nice, fun thing to do, particularly in lockdown when no one's got anything better to do. So I think having that niche, you know, for me, it's very much that I share the highs and the lows, and I have horses at different stages of training. If you have something about you that makes you stand out, not only are you favourable to people who want to follow you, but eventually you're favourable to brands because you're your own person.
I think that's such a good point. We there's a lot of people look at influencers, look at people on social media and go, I want to be like them, and they don't necessarily focus on the right bits of that sentence. They try and make themselves a carbon copy of another person, whereas that's not what they should be trying to do. Yes, absolutely, look at that person and go, yes, they post regularly, they've been at it a while, the quality of their images is good, but take those positive overarching themes and put your life into that. As you say, if actually your horses go really, really nicely, you shouldn't be kind of going, oh, I wish they'd go wrong so I could talk about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because your audience aren't the same. You know, your audiences aren't the same. And it's looking at, you say, your unique makeup that is going to draw your tribe to you. And, you know, when we're generic or when we try and copy someone else, we don't draw the right people to us.
Yeah, completely. And actually you see it so often that people are so sort of obsessed with numbers. You know, people always like, I always get messages like, will you follow me back or I'll unfollow you, that sort of thing. And you think, actually, if you build up an audience of people who follow you to then be followed by you, it won't work because they're not actually interested in you. They won't engage with you. And then you just draw a blank. It will stop. You know, there'll be like that glass ceiling where you can't reach. I mean, you can only follow, what is it, like 7,500 people on Instagram. So if that's how you rely on getting your following, you know, there's clear sort of barriers there. So I think that's the biggest thing, is numbers shouldn't be the thing that's on your mind because it's so obvious.
Yeah, and you know, you can buy numbers. As I say every time I mention this on the podcast, for the love of God, don't. Because they're never going to add value. They're never going to engage with you. They're never going to be interested in what you've got to say. And having an Instagram account with a big old number under your name, but no one ever comments or likes, that must be quite crushing.
Exactly. And yeah, and you're never going to continue to grow further if that is the case, because Instagram looks at people who, you know, already have an engagement among their following and then go, great, well, now let's push that, you know, not the person who's got 10,000 followers and gets 10 likes. They're like, well, something's up with that.
Yeah, and as well, you're kind of raving fans, your cheerleaders. They're going to comment, they're going to share, they're going to save. And there's lots of talk at the moment that saving posts is going to be prioritized. And actually, my Instagram account has now got a saved tab under the edit screen, which has literally come on before I pressed record on this, which does suggest that saving posts is going to have a decent weight in the algorithm. But if you have got followers that don't care about what you're saying, they're never going to save it or like or comment or send you a DM or share. So as you say, you're going to reach that point when no one's interested, no one's talking about it. What are you going to do now?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree with that more.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
You know what, I think that's everything. It's been really nice to sort of chat through all the different elements and, you know, brands and the actual social media itself. And yeah, it's been great.
Well, I flipping love this, and genuinely 10 out of 10 for the email. So Flo, tell us all the places where people can find you online.
So it's Flo Carter Eventing on basically everything. On Instagram is where I'm mostly at. YouTube is certainly something I'm very passionate about and I'm trying to do more of. You can find me at the same on Facebook, which is just more competition updates, and the occasional TikTok as well.
You have been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for sending me the email and for listening and taking everything on board. And I can't wait to see you continue to grow and bloom, and obviously have an amazing season this year too.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing. So thank you.